Alright, so I thought I'd make a video on my interest recently in Applied Energistics 2. And I'm going to say this video is going to be aimed more towards people that understand how Applied Energistics 2 works. The basics anyways. And will start to be getting into advanced programming, or people that are already pretty good at the advanced stuff and would like to see this as some form of being able to redesign their own networks. So what I started off with was this, trying to figure out how can I compress 32 channels from an ME controller face down to the one channel with a P2P tunnel. I remember seeing videos on this, so it takes these 32 channels coming off this face, compressing them down to one channel, and this one channel would go to another P2P tunnel on the other end that is paired with the P2P tunnel, and then it would take these 32 channels down to one channels back into 32 channels, right? And I figured out how to do it with 3 to get 96. And then of course the power. I figured out that later on that you have to have one of these faces or just something to give the P2P tunnels power. The ME controllers themselves do not give power, as I found out rather partially. Don't worry about this. This was it was kind of a rough draft at this. This was the first major processor I made, and these two minus this are basically the same, right? So what I did is I found out that this shape, if we're going to go with what would be the best, most efficient use of space type of shape that maximizes the amount of channels I could use, what would be the best shape? And it was this. I thought that this right here, this 3x3 hollow cube, was about the best shape I could make, where I could have 4 P2P tunnels on the inside and 8 P2P channels worth on the outside. So 12 channels per face, basically, if you're counting the outside and inside. So I started to experiment with this a little. I figured out a very symmetrical way to do this. Now, I'll try to explain this one. The only difference between this one and this one is this one I kept all the channels compressed until when I needed them. This I just I uncompressed them as soon as they were out of the ME controller. So, for example, for this green cable, I have the 4 P2P tunnels here, my inputs, coming to the outputs here. So it's using all 8 channels, and then now we have 32 channels per side. I just, decompressed them immediately. Same with these, with the blue ones. 1, 2, 3, 4. Depth to these 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the corners, 1, 2, 3, with 1, 2, 3. So they're all being used. And this would allow this literally could be put in the center of something. You have a plethora of cables that you could route around. So you could have 8 cables going this direction. You would have some going upwards, 8 upwards, 8, basically 8 in every direction, pretty much. Give or take a few here and there. But this was extremely impractical. This took a while to build. This is just way too many cables I would have to route. I would need a massive, dome to put this thing in. Now, albeit this thing looks epic as all fuck, but this is impractical. And on top of that, there was a big issue. When I was making this, I had no clue how I could power the ME controller and the P2P tunnels. And I didn't really contemplate on that as much when I was building this. So one whole blue and green set of cables is not being used. And instead, I'm using it for, I used it for the terminal. So at least I gave it a use. Oh, I don't even have any ME drives connected. But yeah, it would, if I put an ME drive on the end of this, it could store stuff. It works. So now I thought I need to compress this down. And for, somebody like a normal base, like if someone put this in their house, if someone wanted to put this in their basement, they're not going to turn every wall into facades. So I built this, and it's based around a better principle versus instead of splitting the inside and outside as two separate, I don't even know what you'd call these. Like, I just call them subnets. They're two different networks basically, because you have the green network and the blue network. I kept them all together, or combined it. So the inside channels, these 4 channels, and these 8 channels on the outside are connected to a Fluix cable, which holds all 12 channels. But it separates the two and keeps them separate so they keep their channels. You know what I mean. The people here should be advanced, they should know. So this goes into 12 channels. I did this for 2 sides apiece, getting 24 channels apiece. Let me break these. That'll come at a later date. Let these, well, not a later date, in a minute. So let's just show these off for a second. These will go down to 24 channels. So we have 2 faces, 2 more faces, top and side, the bottom, and this side, right? Now, the only thing is as per usual, I could get power to the P2P tunnels and all the cables, but not the ME controller itself. So I thought of an interesting idea where I just call it popping the lid off. I took the P2P tunnel off of one of these corners, put some green cable there, and just put the P2P tunnel back on top. As simple as it can get. I basically was like, okay, pop the lid off, boom. Literally all I did, and just reconnected it. That's all you needed to do. So that's what I did, and I found out that this was how I was going to get direct power to the ME controllers, so I just did a quartz fiber with whatever smart cable to whatever energy source I would use, and I just, created energy cells, because I'm experimenting. So now, I would have 24 channels apiece, 3 sets of them, so that's 72 channels worth of P2P tunnels, which is awesome. But now there came the issue of, well, there wasn't really an issue. It was now I just needed to figure out how to route these out to these 3 cables. And I figured out just an ME controller. ME controller works perfectly fine, but now I need power to this. So I connected all the cables together, and what I did is I just took a creative energy cell with whatever smart cable I did, connected it to the green one since it's on the bottom side. It made it easier with some quartz fiber, and the ME controller gets power. I did it, and I also did it to the purple one for symmetry. You don't have to do that. Actually, yeah, I don't think you have to. I think it gets power from the ME controller. So, but yeah. So I gave the ME controller power, so now the channels can be spread out through this ME controller. Now this ME controller, the 3 sides that came to these outer cables, all 32 channels are going to be used up for these faces. So these faces, every face on this ME controller, once I reconnect that, is all utilized. So these 32 channels are going to follow all the way here, and these 32 channels, all of them are being used by P2P tunnels. These P2P tunnels are each paired to a corresponding P2P tunnel on these faces. So for example, for organization's sake, I followed the orange one, so I did 2 sets of 4, 3 times, for 3 branches. So it's like 4 and 4, 4 and 4, and then 4 and 4 again, with 4 and 4 again, so on and so forth. And then I had 6 more outside faces, so 8, 8, 8, 8, 8, 8, right? So 8, 8, 8, 8, 8, 8. But then if you think about it now, that means I had basically 9 faces worth of channels, because the two insides count as 1 outside face. So I have 9 branches worth of these that I could use. I had 9 sets of 32 P2P channels. But then that means I could have just left this the same way with my a dense cable, and instead of having a third dense cable, I could just have a normal smart cable. Cuz it'd be 32, 64, 72. Cuz I'd only have 72 channels worth of P2P tunnels. Right? So I could have just gotten away with a smart cable and just had, let's just pretend this purple cable was a normal smart cable and just this one branch and then the other two with their 4 branches. But I didn't want to do that. That's wasting a whole face on the semi controller. I wanted to make this as efficient as possible. So how would I get those channels back? Well, you make a friend for it. You make a friend for your processor, a coprocessor, name it Jenny, who cares? There's no name for these. So I thought to myself, there's 8 channels to spare on all 3 of these. So I would need 24 faces. Well, a 2x2 cube has 24 faces to spare. So all I did was connect two faces, or 2 sides, all their faces, so 4 and 8, to one cable. That'll go back up to 32, as you'll see in a second. Bada bing, bada boom. There we go. So 32 channels. I did it for the top, and as you can see, I did the same pop the lid off power technique. So we got the top one, it's going to get 32 channels, and then this side one's going to get its 32 channels. So now we have 96 channels for the P2P tunnels. So then I could add the 3 more branches. Perfect. That's all I needed to know. Now, what exactly is this thing capable of? It's capable of, I think, 3,072 channels. So I only got one of these set up, one of the branches set up on one of the cables. So this is paired with one of these sets. I think it's paired with this inside ring and this inside ring. So that's the 8 P2P tunnels that are corresponding to these 8 P2P tunnels. And as you would guess, I think all of you know that the P2P tunnels compress 32 channels down to a single channel. And I'm doing that 8 times, and then uncompressing those 1 channels back to 32 8 times. So now this allows you to connect all of this, and this one branch can control 8 walls of 32 ME drives. So we have 8 sections of 32 ME drives. That's a ton of storage. You'll never have to deal with storage issues ever again if you fill those up with 64K ME drives. And I could do this 11 more times. I could have 12 walls of these, or 12 walls of machines, just like each of these individual blocks. That's what these 2 are capable of. So this is really not a tutorial per se. It's more of a small explanation for those that actually understand what I'm talking about, or understand how this is run. And this is my take on the most efficient processor basically I could make so far. I might continue. I might make some new shapes. I might come up with 5x5s and the like, whatever it may be. But this is my favorite one by far. If I were to ever build an absurd processor in survival, and with only 3 backbone cables, dude, that's perfect. I would only need 3 sets of facades wherever I took these, and I would have so many sets I could set up. You know, that's 96 dense cables worth of channels, all from this, because I'm just compressing them with the power P2P tunnels. Well, so that's about it. That's really all I gotta say. And yeah, I don't think I'm gonna make a tutorial on this. Hopefully, because well, I'm not really good at explaining things in depth and keeping them simple, because I'm just full of jargon. So yeah, for those that do understand this, I hope you think this design is interesting. There's probably better ways to compress this. I could probably move this whole thing forward a block if I wanted. Like, just like, sure. But yeah, that's my take. Hope you enjoyed it. And I'd like to see maybe videos of other people come up with their own designs. That'd be cool. But yeah, thank you. If you came this far, thanks for seeing my interest in this and being interested in this as well. Hope you like this design.